Let's get into the keys to victory for this game for the Bulldogs before we make our picks for the week. Again, I know this is a longer episode, but it's the one big episode we're doing for the season. Number one, key to victory for Mississippi State, and I talked about this earlier, it's the idea of being fully locked in, playing clean, and starting fast. And I know this is something we have talked about, game in, game out. Like, it's been a theme for Mississippi State. They need to start fast. They need to play clean football. All that's true. It has never been more true than it is in this game. Again, you have an opponent where all of the conversation and seemingly a lot of the focus is on whether or not their head coach is going to be here a year from now. But forget a year, a week from now. Is he going to be the head coach there? So they are not going to be fully locked in. Maybe they are, but it feels like they're not going to be. It feels like they're going to be prone to sleepwalking. It feels like they're going to be prone to making mistakes. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe that Ole Miss team rallies and they're like, screw whatever Lane's doing. We got a chance to lock up a playoff spot. We're going to go out and play our best game of the year. I'm sure that's what they're preaching in the locker room. But I think it's hard to expect them to be as locked in as possible. If Ole Miss is going to have that going on, you as Mississippi State have to take advantage. And taking advantage means you are playing as good a football game as you can start to finish. You are not committing dumb penalties. You are not missing opportunities. When Lebby schemes something open, we are hitting it. We are blocking it right. We're finding the right hole to run through. Defensively, we're not missing tackles. If we have a chance to get a sack, and we're going to make it happen. If we get a chance for a turnover, we're going to make it happen. We're not blowing up a field goal sequence with a bad snap. We're not giving up punt return or kick return touchdowns. Mississippi State has found ways to lose every single week this season. You can't do it this time because you can't win the football game if you are making those mistakes. But your opponent could be prone to making them in this game. You got to take advantage. On top of all that, the whole starting fast idea, we talked about this with Mississippi State against Florida because that was the game everyone knew this is it for Billy Napier. Win or lose, Billy Napier is going to be gone after this game. And I talked about State needs to start fast and put a nail in the coffin of the Gators as quickly as they can, because if they do that, that Florida team is probably going to lay down and quit. State offensively went down the field, scored a touchdown on the first drive. They held Florida to a field goal on Florida's first drive. And then on State's second drive of the game, they get into Florida territory and they miss out on scoring touchdowns. They had like a wide open touchdown, didn't hit it. And then from that point forward, it became a whole issue of Mississippi State missing chances. They gave life to Florida, and Florida was able to stay in that game and ultimately get the win. You got to bury Ole Miss early. You need to hit the dagger in this game. It needs to be like we're talking like State gets up 14-0 in this game. You've got to do it. Because if you do it, I think Ole Miss is going to have a hard time on the road coming back with all the conversation. Especially if they lose, I think it's, well, Lane's done. Our coach is out of it. You got to take advantage. And if you can do those things and strike fast and play clean football, Mississippi State's going to have a really good chance of winning this game.
My first key to victory is don't get too comfortable with the lead. Don't get too comfortable with it. Look, I don't care if it's 7-0, 3-0. I don't care. You're up. That's great. That's fine. I feel like State at times this year has kind of gotten a little complacent, and at times, like, you could tell they're putting forth an effort, but it feels like not as much as when they started the game. I know this team is better than their record. I knew they were better than a 2-10 record last year. I mean, I think a lot of people knew, like, yeah, they went 2-10, but they had some games go their way. They're 5-7, just shy of a bowl. And I don't know, man. Like, I feel like what I've seen this year, outside of maybe Georgia, Georgia's Georgia. They're going to do Georgia things and beat everybody. But like Texas or whoever, they had opportunities to win this game or to make a statement or to just put more points up on the board or just make a better decision as far as play calling or something. They've had their opportunities. Don't let it get out of hand. don't get too comfortable in the game. Play relentless every single down you can. That's what I would say.
Well, I'll spin that forward. We've seen State twice now this season have a big lead at home in
Mhm.
a big game where you had a good crowd, you had an energized crowd, you had people fired up because it felt like a turning point for the program. Arizona State and Texas. You're up 17-0 on Arizona State. You allowed
Yep.
Arizona State to come all the way back and take the lead. Now, you got the win. You made a great goal line stand, and then you scored an incredible touchdown. But you easily could have lost that football game. Texas, you had a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter, and you completely choked it away. So you're right. Like, do we know State's going to have a lead in this game? No, of course not. We don't know that. But if State does do what I talked about and they strike fast and they get up a couple scores, even if you're thinking about Ole Miss laying down, you've got to keep foot to gas, pedal to the floor, continue pouring it on. This team cannot sit idly by. You're correct. They cannot sit back because they have found ways to lose in that manner. Number
Mhm.
two, key to victory, State needs its best rushing game of the year. On the season, and I'm just curious, Mississippi State running the football. So their best rushing day of the year was Northern Illinois. That was 292 yards. From a yards per carry standpoint, obviously Alcorn State. Within conference play, it is by far the Tennessee game. They ran it 57 times for 203 yards at about 3.6 yards per carry. That is the best from yardage. That is the best in terms of yards per carry. They did not run the football consistently, and that's under 4 yards. That's all about 3.5 yards per carry. That's not very good, but that was the best run day they had of the year. And to be fair to State, they were running the football much more effectively until the fourth quarter when Albert Reese got hurt, and then all of a sudden their yards per carry numbers really started to fall off. And you're hoping you'll have Albert Reese and you'll be fully healthy for this game, and your offensive line can be as good as possible. This has got to be State's best rushing game of the year. That is where the weakness is for Ole Miss defensively, is in defending the run. Their pass defense is solid. Now, I will say they've seen two good passing games, and those two good passing games threw it on them. But I don't know if we can call Mississippi State a good passing attack. So, maybe State has a big day through the air, and if you're able to attack, awesome. I feel like State's going to have to be able to run the football effectively in this game to have a lot of sustained success. And the other big thing is here, the one thing Ole Miss tends to do well on defense is they get off the field on third down. They find ways to get third down stops. The easiest way to convert on third downs is to make third downs as manageable as possible, which means staying ahead of the chains and keeping it rolling, which you generally are doing with the run game if you can run the football effectively. Fluff Bothwell, you need him back to being the player he was early in the season before he got hurt. You need to see full, healthy Fluff once again. You need Devon Booth to run well. And I talked about it when I talked about the struggles for Ole Miss defending the run. Quarterback run game is a part of this. And I'm not talking about Blake. You got to find a way to get Camario on the field and get him involved in the ground game. If State can get the run game going, I think they're going to have a good chance to have a big day on offense. One, it does literally open up their pass game. Like, this is a passing game that is really heavily built on their ability to run the football. But two, you stay ahead of the chains, you're moving the ball. Ole Miss's red zone defense, I mentioned this earlier, it's not great. Teams can score once they get down to the red zone against Ole Miss, and they can punch it in the end zone when they get down to the red zone against Ole Miss, not just settle for field goals. Having the ability to run the football is a part of that. And like when the field gets constricted, can you still run the football well? State needs a big day on the ground. If State runs the football effectively against Ole Miss, they will be in the football game.
I agree. Um, I think the run game is going to be, the run game always relies on the offensive line, though. And we've talked quite a bit this season about the O line, and it's had its good moments, it's had its bad moments, been kind of inconsistent at times, and stuff like that. So I would agree with your assessment there. We got to run the football and take advantage of, I don't want to say a really bad or depleted, but just a average run defense that Ole Miss has. Maybe it's a little bit below. I don't know, but uh yeah, there's that. Another key to victory for me is just I don't know, man. Just hitting the big plays or trying to offensively. I think that the O line's got to be there. Blake Shapen's got to be protected, but just having the receivers step up in a big way with Brennan Thompson and company, use their speed on the field, outrun those defenders, get open, and make the big plays. You want to create a situation where you are slowing down that secondary for Ole Miss. And if you can do that, and you're able to score, you're able to win. I say that a lot, but I think that's a really important factor.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Last key to victory for me, red zone stops on defense.
Mhm.
I expect Ole Miss to be able to move the football. I think Lane will scheme up ways for them to have success moving the ball. Look, they've got too many skill players on offense that are good. They've got between the running back and the receiving core, it's hard to deal with an offense that's got as many good pieces of that, especially with the quarterback who's done a good job protecting the football, making good decisions, getting the ball out quick, all of that. But Ole Miss has not been great in the red zone. They have not been great about punching it in when they get down to the goal line. Some of it's decision making from Kiffin and what type of calls they go with in certain situations and whether or not they go. But they don't all. It's not even about always punching into the end zone. Sometimes it's about scoring. They find ways to mess up in the red zone. That's kind of one of the Achilles heels for that offense. State's red zone defense has not been great this year. They need to step up in this one. And I think when you talk about a defensive approach for Mississippi State, I am saying bend, don't break against Ole Miss. And guys, I'm going to call for them to bring back the defense that everyone just loves to hate. It's time for the 3-3-5 look. It's time for the 3 down linemen, 3 high safeties. And I know they're going to run out in that. And Kawan Lacey's going to get the ball, and he's going to run for like 7 yards. And people are going to lose their mind screaming at Coleman Hutzler. I'm telling you right now, just stacking the box is not the answer against Ole Miss. One, stacking the box has not been the answer for State's run game to begin with, defending the run anyway. 2, Ole Miss has too many weapons in the receiving core for you to be able to deal with if you do that. The other part to this, though, you have to force Ole Miss is a team that wants to hit explosive plays. As I said, they're not great in the red zone. If they can score from far, shout out to the hashtag, they have a lot more success. If you force them to have to sustain drives, it becomes a little tougher. They can do it because Trinidad has done a good job as being a guy who can sort of dink and dunk his way down the field a little bit. And also Trinidad's legs play a role here as well. And when you have a quarterback who can make plays with his legs, it does sort of hurt the idea of just trying to limit a team from the big plays because there's typically space for the quarterback to be able to run some, which that's going to be another thing here. State can't let Trinidad kill them with his legs. But the rush 3 drop 8 approach and playing with a light box, I mentioned the Ole Miss pass game this year is more air raid-esque. It really is. They look more like an air raid team when it comes to how they throw the football. Rush 3, drop 8. And I know, they're going to hand it off to Kawan Lacey. I mentioned earlier, Ole Miss does not run the football the same way that Missouri does. Missouri is a pro-style run game that leans heavily on outside zone as the basis of everything they do, and that is a perfect way to attack the Mississippi State defense. Ole Miss is a spread run game. It is classic. We run the ball because we have space to run the football. We have numbers to run, so we hand the football off, and we're just spamming inside zone over and over and over again. They'll run some outside zone every now and then. Maybe they'll mix in a few gap scheme looks. I'm sure they will. Obviously, they hit a big run off of gap scheme against Mississippi State last year. That long touchdown run was a pin and pull look, and which would be an effective run against the State defense again. I'm sure Lane will have that in the arsenal. But primarily, they're going to run inside zone a bunch. The 3 down, 3 safety defense is meant to pick apart teams that want to just try to spam inside zone RPO all day. Because we're not giving you the quick, easy access throws. We're not giving you the shot down the field. And when you hand the football off, guess what's going to happen? Our safeties are flying downhill. Yeah, you're probably going to get some yardage. We can look up at the end of the day and Ole Miss runs for 200 yards. I don't care. Look at the yards per carry. If they had to take a ton of carries to get to that number, You probably did a pretty good job. What are the yards per carry? How did you do in the red zone? It is a bend, don't break approach for Mississippi State on defense. I think that is your best bet here. That's what State did in the Egg Bowl a season ago. They played that style. And what do you know? It was the one game where it worked for Mississippi State really well. I think Coleman Hutzler needs to bring it back. And I think the defense can – I know it's famous last words, but everyone is like, oh, my God, what is Kawan Lacey going to do to this run defense? I don't care if Lacey has a big day if you don't let him run wild and have huge break-off runs. And I think State will handle the run game against Ole Miss better than they did Missouri.
Basically, you take away the explosiveness. I mean, like you said, man, if I would say no more than like 4 or 5 yards like a carry. You said I think about 3 or so. Like
if they're under 4 yards a carry, I'm happy.
Right. The thing is when you give up too many explosive plays, that's what kills you in the game. That really is. You can give up some yardage. You can give up some plays here or there. That's fine. It's going to happen. And you're going to have good offenses you go up against. Ole Miss is going to have to deal with that against State's offense and vice versa.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
But you take away the explosive part of the Ole Miss offense that we're used to seeing, State has a chance.
For sure. No, and especially for an Ole Miss team that does not convert in the red zone at a high enough clip, when you don't let them hit the big plays and you force them to have to sustain drives, that's where mistakes can happen. So that's got to be the approach to me State takes defensively. And I know everyone in the fan base disagrees. I know, again, every time they line up with the light box that Kawan Lacey carries it for 5, 6, 7 yards, people are going to be screaming. Trust the process. Let it play out. If it's going poorly, well, then you adjust. But I think you have to take that approach coming into this game.